Alright, AP World, I'm going to be taking you through the rest of the story of the Mongols and kind of their connection with the Silk Roads network and all that kind of business. Um, and that will finish us off on the first of our three networks of exchange we're focused on here in unit number 2. So here we go. This is where we left off in class, and kind of showing you, matter of fact, as we get the creation of the Mongol Khanate. You already have that process of them taking control over lands over which a lot of those Silk Roads networks are located. And I recall if it came up in class or not, but bottom line, the Mongols are going to provide stability and security to allow trade to continue. They, I guess, despite their reputation, it's not like they, destroy the Silk Roads networks or raid them and steal everything. They actually they understand the need for that trade to continue, to strengthen Asia, which in turn strengthens them. And so they do. They provide almost kind of like the security to make sure that none of those shady characters we were talking about, will from time to time try to raid some of those caravans and carry off their merchandise. The Mongols are there to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen. Okay, so that's where we left that off. This slide, we're going to kind of focus in here on how the Mongols are able to create this monstrously large empire that they eventually create. Again, the largest in contiguous, land-based that we're going to see in all of world history. And so some of the technologies that they focus in on is, first of all, really becoming master horsemen. I suppose the shock element of the Mongol military was their what we call cavalry, basically mounted soldiers like you see there in the picture. And the Mongols are given credit with developing these special saddles for their troops and stirrups and all that sort of thing. They also develop a bow. Some of you in world studies might remember we learned about this. They develop a composite bow, which is thin strips of wood glued together to create a bow that was much more flexible and durable. And could shoot, because of that durability and flexibility, could shoot an arrow further, more accurate, that sort of thing. And so another element of their military. Again, a lot of times the reputation of the Mongols is that they're this barbarian horde that just sweeps down on villages and again just destroying everything in their path. And while there is a little bit of something to that, the reality is that we know that the Mongol military was actually kind of what you've got there for number 2, highly organized. They were one of the first militaries to kind of break themselves into all of these kind of, matter of fact, I think my next section here, to break themselves into all of these special units. So you'd have some parts of the Mongol military that were focused on reconnaissance, riding out ahead of the main army to figure out where the enemy was located and then what kind of strength, and be able to take that intelligence then back to the main group so that planning could be done to, how to tackle that enemy. Units that were focused on, whether it might be communications, whether it might be with some of the weapons that they use, siege weapons that they use against cities. And so, like I said, highly, highly organized. Like it mentions, they're extremely disciplined. They're not a barbarian horde. They are well-trained soldiers that listen to orders and understand that, that is where success comes from, is from the discipline, the obedience, and all of that. And the order that they have. And so really that is what is at the core of the success of the Mongol military and how they're able to build this empire. It's not that they're this, foaming at the mouth mob that just sweeps across the steppes and, through Asia. It's very much actually the opposite. Okay, strategy and tactics. They again, with all this organization, they spend a lot of time focusing on how they fight, and some of it is fairly simple kind of strategies that when you kind of think about it. using kind of hit and run tactics against an enemy, where you attack, but then you just immediately withdraw. You don't stay to see what's going to happen afterwards, and then come back and hit them again and do the same thing. It kind of leaves an enemy a little off balance and not sure what to expect, instead of and being met by an enemy that attacks and continues the attack. No, the Mongols are showing a different approach here. They also use, surprise attack, ambush, things like that, where, they will sweep down on an enemy that, has the misfortune of riding into a valley or something like that. And so they really focus a lot on how they use warfare as well. Not only that organization, but also just really applying almost like science to the whole craft of war. All right. And then a lot of borrowed technology. They borrow a lot from the Chinese. They borrow from some of these other civilizations that they either attack or capture, absorb into their empire. And a lot of them are what we call siege weapons, okay, which you see there in number 5. And siege weapons are the kind of weapons, like we talked about in class, the Mongols, that hard bargain, it's like, surrender to us and we'll treat you, basically, we'll treat you okay. We might take some of your treasure, your wealth from you, but we will spare you your lives. But if you resist us, there it goes. And for those a lot of times those cities, those towns, a lot of them are walled cities. And they build these high walls around the cities to protect against this very thing. But the Mongols apply these basically all these different kinds of structures, like the one you see there on the left, which is several stories high, that you would roll those up against an enemy wall. You see the old engraving, the picture there from which is a really, really old print from those times, and showing a siege weapon being moved up closer and closer to the walls of that city. And the whole idea is, you would build these a mass number of them, and you would roll them up against those walls simultaneously, and and the hopes that the people inside would not be able to respond to this mass attack that's coming from all sides of their city. And so, using catapults. While I'm on the topic of the catapults, there's always been rumors about the Mongols, using catapults not only to launch like burning bales of hay, or sometimes just big large rocks to just do damage to buildings inside the city walls, sometimes against the walls themselves to try to bring them down. There are also stories about the Mongols throwing bodies, using catapults to shoot bodies into these cities, and a lot of times bodies of people who had died of various diseases, with the whole idea that we'll spread the disease in this city that we've laid siege to. And so they're operating from every angle you can think of in order to defeat these cities. And one by one, the Mongols are almost always successful in getting either through those walls, over those walls, whatever it takes, and rendering what these cities thought was making them impregnable, making it useless. Okay, all right, and so let's see. From there, we're going to go to kind of where we reach this point where Genghis Khan can kind of take a step back, and it's like, hey, look at everything that we've accomplished. As he reaches, gets his empire to just this massive size. Pax Mongolica is this term that kind of refers to that, the empire at peace, and it also is a term that we kind of refer to as almost kind of like the peak of the power that the Mongols are going to have before forces begin to work against them and begin to shrink their empire back down. Okay, let's see. Karakoram will be a city that is established in Asia that will be more or less the equivalent to the capital of the Mongol Empire. Given its kind of central location, it's going to be a city that kind of infuses a lot of influence from various areas that the Mongols have conquered, have made part of their empire. Government structure, they're going to be borrowing some of that from the Chinese. Same with some of the infrastructure, bridge building technologies. They'll take those from the Chinese as well. They also bring in some influences with some of that government building and some of that infrastructure from the Islamic world as well. And so they're kind of doing a little bit of that blending. I think I mentioned before, and if not, the Mongols themselves don't really have a strong religious belief. They don't. You're not going to find the Mongols. Many of them, if they worship anything, it's going back to some of their traditional religions, which some of it's a little bit polytheism, some of it's a little bit of animism, that sort of thing. But their empire is not based on faith. It's not Dar al-Islam. It is an empire that is kind of built for the sake of, controlling territory and the wealth that comes from doing that. So as being, really not having religion as a real strong kind of motivator for them, the Mongols practice a lot of religious tolerance in the places that they conquer. Generally speaking, I mean, they have no interest in converting you to anything. And so, where they conquer, again, if you don't resist and you peacefully surrender, they're pretty much going to tell you, go about your business, practice your faith, those kinds of things. And that's what they're onto. Okay. And this one, just to kind of reinforce, okay, which I mentioned on the prior slide there, is just that Mongol role in the Silk Roads. When we talk about this, that the Silk Roads kind of goes to that golden age, really, really early on, kind of where we started this unit. We see that resurgence. We see that kind of that second shot, that jolt of energy being injected into this network by the Mongols this time. Okay. And again, just the idea that the Mongols not only protecting, kind of adding, kind of for providing the security basically, but also to an extent kind of controlling them. Okay, they're going to benefit from this trade, but at the same time, it's not like they completely cut off trade. China is still going to be, things leaving China and making it to destinations in the West, and goods coming from the West making it to destinations in the East. They don't completely take over the Silk Roads. They benefit from it, but there's that whole security and stability that the Mongols are able to provide to the networks, and really play that role in helping to reestablish the Silk Roads as being an important network of exchange. Okay, this kind of gets your map. This kind of gives you that look of Pax Mongolica. All right, and the extent to which the empire grows by the time it begins to reach some of its first challenges. So up in the north, again, Russia does not exist as a country, but when you look at Moscow, Kyiv over here, Ukraine, Crimea, which is kind of getting into likewise parts of Ukraine, really starting to kind of get really close there into Eastern European countries. Down here in the Middle East, they are all the way through Afghanistan, Pakistan, into Iraq and Iran, all of those areas, and probably the only thing really saving South Asia down here, India, is the mountain ranges up there that act as pretty much kind of a geographic barrier. And by the time the Mongols could have really started maybe pushing down and in, is when they're going to start seeing forces begin to combine against them and start shrinking the empire. All right, let's see here. So let's talk about just that whole kind of idea about the expansion of it. And the story goes something like this. First of all, we have the death of Genghis Khan. Okay, he dies in 1227. A lot of different stories about his death. One of them that he was thrown from a horse and did not take good care of the injury. It festered and became something eventually life-threatening and killed him. There's other stories that float around about him being poisoned by rival leaders within the Mongol government. There's other stories that he just died of of old age. I don't know. It's hard. He's one of those people, kind of, I mean, he was a living human, but he was also legendary, and sometimes the facts get kind of blurred in there. But we know in 1227, whichever way he goes out, he's dead. And he's going to end up being replaced, not by just a single person coming and saying, hey, I'm going to take over. Ogadai Khan is his son. And so he is definitely going to play a large role in replacing the power vacuum with the death of his father. But he's also going to employ the grandsons of Chinggis Khan. And what he'll end up doing is assigning those grandsons to lead some of the larger Mongol armies. And the empire, one of these facts for you to understand is the empire does continue to grow some after Chinggis Khan dies. When he dies, he does not see that that huge expanse I showed you on the other slide there. He's achieved an amazing amount of territorial gain in his lifetime, but Ogadai and the grandsons are the ones that are going to take it even further. Okay. Batu is going to be one of those grandsons who leads a force that comes to be known as the Golden Horde, and they're going to be the ones who will go marching into Russia. Okay, and just ride with me on this. Russia before it was called Russia. Okay, and in 1240, that land they conquer it and bring it under Mongol control. And are marching on Europe. I mean, like I said, they got close. They were making steady progress, and looked like that they were going to march straight into countries like Austria, maybe into Central Europe. Who knows? Maybe would have taken all of Europe. But about the time that they begin to really make progress, Ogadai dies, and the decision is made to kind of play it safe while decisions are made about what's going to happen with leadership. Again, Ogadai does not end up surviving his father by a real long time. But that Golden Horde is going to end up playing a role in Russia until about 1380. Their presence in Russia will last quite a long time. Okay, another grandson, Hulegu. He is the one who marches down into Southwest Asia, into the Middle East. And he is the one that will go down and pretty much finish off what's left of the Abbasid dynasty. Abbasid dynasty already kind of teetering after the Crusades. I mean, they win the Crusades, but they're severely weakened by 100 years of warfare with the Christians coming out of Europe. And so they are not in a good position to fight back when the Mongols come in from the other side. And they will go ahead and establish the Khan Empire down there in Southwest Asia. Interestingly enough, we see another one of these cases of kind of almost, I don't know, you want to think about it as like reverse conversion, because Hulegu will end up converting to Islam. He will be kind of taken by the faith of those he has conquered, and will become Muslim himself eventually down the road. All right, and so 1258 when the Abbasid dynasty is brought down, and shortly after that is able to capture Baghdad, and pretty much kind of takes you everywhere through that. Let's see, what else do I want to do here? Before I think, do I have? Yeah, okay, we'll talk about Chagatai Khanate there in Central Asia. That will be another that's going to be developed. So what they're doing, in effect, is they're taking. What they're doing is sorry guys, I've got about 10 things going on at once in my mind here. Is they're taking Genghis Khan's big empire, and they're splitting it up. Okay, I mean, all these people, Ogadai and Batu and Hulegu, they all get along. I mean, it's not like that they're fighting. That they're going to be starting to fight against each other. Some of this, who knows? Maybe this is trying to learn a lesson from the Romans, and looking at empires that sometimes fall because they're just too big. Maybe it's a recognition that they don't have anyone with the force of personality that Genghis Khan had, and so they're figuring it'll be easier to continue the empire if we divide it up and each take a piece to run ourselves. And so, that's what you have going on. You've got Batu, you've got Ulegu. So, you get Golden Horde in Russia, the Ilkhan Empire in Southwest Asia, and then you'll have the Chagatai Khanate that's going to pretty much be established there in you got it, Central Asia. Okay. And so, the pro to all this is what kind of allows for further expansion of the empire. But where we're going to see the downside of this is that, part of the magic when Genghis was running it is they had a highly centralized government. Okay. Karakorum, they have a capital, they've got this one leader. Now they're starting to water it down. And while we can understand maybe some of their motivations for doing that, again, we don't want to get too big. We don't get too big. Before they realize it, they're going to, and they're going to realize it almost too late, that by dividing things up, they've very much minimized the power of that centralized government. And folks, if we're already picking up on one lesson, it's the importance of centralized government. Whether you're talking about a country, an empire, it doesn't matter. Okay, and so now we look back on this and we see the division of the empire into these various, khanates and that kind of thing. We see this as the beginning of the end of the Mongol Empire. Okay, there's what you got there on the map. Okay, and so the different areas. As a matter of fact, we'll talk about what goes on over in the Yuan dynasty. Let's hit that one next, and that's going to be another one of the grandsons, Kublai Khan. Okay, he will establish the Yuan dynasty in China, and it takes about 30 years for China to be defeated. They do not go easy, but the Mongols from there will attempt to try to add even more. They attempt to invade Japan. That fails. They try to invade down into Southeast Asia. That fails. So they not everything always goes their way. Okay, as a leader so you have a Mongol, all right. I mean, when we talk about the Yuan dynasty, it's going to be a Mongol who is leading China for a stretch of time. Matter of fact, they'll go kind of to about the 1350s before the Mongols will lose control of China. The lady on the left side there. Yeah, no, it's not a lady with a beard. On the left side, her name is Chabi, right? Chabi, Chabi, and she was Kublai Khan's wife, and she was a lady who was very, very fascinated with Chinese culture, Chinese religion. Very, very. Just had a deep, deep interest in it. And her interest and her influence over her husband really wore off in many ways, and in many, many good ways, probably for the Chinese. Because even though, they are these foreigners now, a foreign dynasty that is running the show in China, Kublai Khan's going to be a pretty magnanimous leader. He is going to allow religious tolerance in China. He is going to himself practice a lot of Chinese traditions in a way, kind of to honor, to please his wife, or to recognize, that maybe sometimes your wife might have a good idea. I learned that myself through many years of marriage, and maybe sometimes some hard lessons. More often than not, the wife will have a good idea, and Chabi was definitely an example of that. Okay, so a little bit there about the Yuan dynasty, and like I said, they will pretty much keep control over that thing until we get a revolt and the coming of the Ming dynasty, which will reestablish Chinese control. And that revolt that will happen in 1368, part of the inspiration of that revolt will be the Chinese watching the Mongols try and fail to conquer Japan, try and fail to conquer the Southeast Asia, and that kind of that realization that these guys aren't infallible. They're not you can beat them, and so that'll kind of power them to eventually overthrow the Mongols in China and reestablish a Chinese dynasty. All right, long-term impacts of the Mongols. Here's where I'm going to kind of wrap this up, and we're going to take it through a little, okay, maybe not so little, a list of impacts coming from the Mongol Empire. Okay, like we've talked about, and this one I don't have to spend much time on. There you go. Other than the British establishing, their massive empire that's, scattered all over the world, islands, things like that. No, A stands on its own. Okay, revitalize trade. The role that they play in, reestablishing the Silk Roads networks, seeing this infusion of trade that's going to connect Asia to the Middle East, to Africa, to Europe. Yeah, that kind of a thing. All right. Cultural and technological exchanges, okay, also sometimes referred to as transfers. This is this is going to be the Mongols because they control and because they secure these routes. Remember, it's just not always goods that are being exchanged. Sometimes these networks of trade are also trading ideas, trading thinking, trading technology. And we're definitely going to see a lot of that going on. You're going to see technology like printing coming from China and being able to make it to other places. Medical knowledge, that Arabic numbering system. You're going to see all kinds of different exchanges take place that go beyond freight and merchandise and that kind of a thing. And again, that's going to happen because the Mongols, for that stretch of time, create that stability, create that that Pax Mongolica, that peace, where this is able to happen all the more easily. Okay, some of the long-term impacts are not quite so positive, and so yeah, the Mongols do take some, according to some, all, but most of the sources I bump into just give the Mongols some of the blame for the introduction of the bubonic plague as it moves through Asia and eventually making it all the way to Europe. And a plague that in the end will, in Europe itself, will end up killing off a complete total third of the overall population of Europe. So definitely going to have some impacts. Back to the positive side. Okay, I guess we're just going to kind of jump around here. And again, they change their mind and pay the price for it later on. But centralized rule is what allows the Mongol Empire to flourish in its glory days. It's what allows them to reach that period, that Pax Mongolica, and to achieve that title of the world's largest land empire. It happens because of centralized government. And again, even though they make their mistake, that's still going to be an influence that sticks around, and others will copy some elements of that later on. Okay, fighting tactics, as we mentioned, this is going to be pretty much kind of a changeover, and we're going to start to see more and more of an adaptation of warfare being based on speed versus being all weighed down in big, heavy armor, things like that. Speed is going to become kind of what, in many cases, increasingly, will win or lose battles. So, kind of a change in fighting tactics, and, the idea of organization and discipline and all of those things will also be influential. Okay. And then, the concept of walled cities will, which had been very, very popular up there leading up to the era of the Mongols, is going to suddenly be realized to be irrelevant. Building walls around a city. What's the point of taking the time and the effort to do it when there's all these new, these siege weapons that can basically make those walls more like something that's trapping your people inside rather than, keeping enemies from outside. And when those walls can be breached so easily with some of the new, weapons of war that are being utilized. And so, and then and my little picture over there, a little borrowing from the Chinese, which, with the Yuan dynasty, I mean, hey, they've kind of got the keys of the kingdom for a while there, and they're able to take advantage of a lot of that Chinese advancement in thinking and inventing and innovating. And And the Mongols will, by the time they reach their peak, they will have perfected the idea of what we call cannon or artillery technology, and just kind of add that to battering down the walls of those cities. So, boom, there you go. There's a nice little list. Some of the things, I guess most of them kind of positive, some kind of neutral. All right, we could debate as to whether fighting tactics is good or bad, being it results in more death probably. But you could also argue that those tactics maybe save lives when it comes to the battlefield. Who knows? We're not going to get bogged down in that. All I know is I'm right 30 minutes in, and that's it. Okay, that covers us on the role of the Mongols. We'll come back and revisit the Mongols a little bit in some of our other units, and they'll probably still even come up from time to time here while we go through our last couple of networks of exchange. But huge influence. There's no getting around it, no getting away from it. Okay? All right, guys, that'll do it. And, we're back to it. We're on to the Indian Ocean network of exchange. Okay? See ya.